Hey guys, so I've recently gotten into doing super light jigging and really enjoying this new technique that I've been fishing with. So in this video I'm going to take you through some of the fish I've caught and some of the techniques I've learnt, and then later in the video I'll go through what jigs I've been using and also what rod and reel and line setup and also clips that you would want to use as part of your super light jigging setup. So the first technique in super light jigging is casting forward ahead of the drift, and this will be very important, especially if you're fishing in deeper water. So my first example here, I'm fishing in 50 meters of water just near Little Barrier. I'm using this technique to cast forward, and I'm using a 90-gram jig. What I do here is I cast the jig well ahead of the drift, and then the boat's going to catch up to it, and by the time the jig sinks to the bottom, the boat should be just before getting to the jig. And then that gives me a bit of time where I can do a bit of light jigging, bit of light movement of the jig at the bottom, and then entice a bite, which you'll see in this first example of the video.
Slammer?
Yeah.
Good?
Oh, I love it, man.
Is it 25 or 35?
25.
Yeah, I'm going to get that, I reckon. Just put 15 pound in it just for the...
Let's see if it's camera shy. Woohoo! Please stay on, please stay on, please stay on. I like that slammer sound. Yeah, very light. Very light, very bendy. Good fun. Woohoo!
And a nice snap on the baby.
Good snap, snap.
That's right, you want back.
Could be the one. Oh, it's a good penny.
That's it. Might have to measure that.
Hey! Cheers, brother.
Nice.
What a fish.
Smallest jig.
Yeah.
That's a mucha.
Oh. I've also been casting ahead of the drift when fishing in shallow water as well. So in the Rangitoto channel here, we're fishing in between 12 to 15 meters of water, and because the jig is 30 grams, you can cast it quite far ahead of the drift. You've obviously fished lighter jig in shallower waters, and that way you can, kind of like soft baiting, you have a lot of fall time available where you can either do big long lifts, or you can do short twitches as your jet ski or boat catches up to the drift.
P2 is it?
Yeah, P2. Might be legal. Alright, so throw back.
What a baby.
It's not bad. It's 30 centimeters on the orange.
29 man.
First cast.
Just 29.
Ah, it's 30.
Release it, mate.
It's gone. The second technique for super light jigging that I use is casting behind the drift, and that is basically dragging the jig along the bottom, giving it small twitches so that it's puffing up the mud a little bit. And you know, that can be good in places where there's not too many rocks and reefs. So you'll want to know your terrain before using the dragging technique, because there's a high chance that if it's quite reefy, that you'll snag your jig and potentially lose it. But the second technique of dragging the jig behind the ski has worked quite well, and I've caught a few fish that way. Oh! A little one. Doesn't actually feel like a snapper. Oh, it's a jack mackerel. Haji. Alright. The third technique of super light jigging is just straight up and down. So basically you can just drop the jig straight down from your boat or your jet ski, and then just doing high lifts of the rod, and that will lift it up and drop it down to the bottom. I found these jigs to work really well in all three methods, and even the method where you're just holding it still and using the rocking motion of the boat seems to catch fish as well. So got an example here where you can see that the rod is just sitting in the rod holder, and the fish has come along and taken the jig and hooked itself up. Pretty lazy way to fish. Wouldn't really call it a technique, but it's just to show you that the jig just going up and down in the water column will be able to catch fish. Uh-oh. Micro jig in the rod holder. It's catching fish. So pretty interesting. Could be a keeper. I'm now going to show you the jigs and the super light jigging range that I use, and these are the ones from Ocean's Legacy. They're called the long contact mini and the hybrid contact. So here's a smaller size of the long contact mini. You can see this is a 30 gram, and this is the one that I would use in shallow water between 10 to 15 meters. It's available in about 8 different colors. You've got the rainbow here, and then here's the pink glow. You'll find these at the shops with hooks pre-rigged onto them. Twin hooks at the top of the jig. And then they go up in size. It's also available in the 50 gram, the 70 gram, and the 90 gram. And this 90 gram long contact mini in the sardine color is the one that caught me the big snapper out at Little Barrier. With these weights of jigs, you have to be careful how you cast them. With the smaller 30 gram, there's no problem doing an overhead cast if your rod supports up to that casting weight. But when I was using the 90 gram to cast, I needed to do an underarm cast, basically a lob, which still gave it really good distance. You just want to make sure that you're looking after your gear when you're casting heavier jigs like this. These are the hooks that the long contact mini ship with, and I've also been testing them with these smaller size 10 mustard hooks. Also in the range is these ones called hybrid contact, and they're a bit flatter in profile, and these will have longer hang time in the water. So these start at 40 grams and it goes 40 grams, 60 grams, 90 grams. Also comes pre-rigged with hooks. Okay, I'll take you through what type of gear you would use for super light jigging. So what is super light jigging to start with? It's fishing with jigs between 30 grams to 90 grams. And how that differentiates from micro jigging is that micro jigging is jigs under 20 grams. And then when you go around 100 grams and above, then that's when you're getting into the slow pitch jigging territory. So bearing in mind that super light jigging is casting and working jigs between 30 grams to 90 grams, what's going to be most important is the rod. So the rod needs to be light and sensitive enough for you to work the jig, but it also needs to be strong enough for you to be able to cast the jig. So the things that you're going to be looking at is what cast weight the rod is rated to and what jigging weight. The rod I use is the Ocean's Legacy Cloud 9. So taking a bit of a closer look at the rod, let's have a look at the specs. So what you can see here, it's a 6'11" rod, PE2 max, but the important part is to look at the jig weight. So you can see on here it's 50 to 100 gram. That's the jig weight that it can work, and then the cast weight, which is 15 to 35 gram. And what that means is you've got that confidence that you can do a big overhead cast with a jig up to 35 gram, which is what this long contact mini is, a 30 gram jig. The second thing that's most important in this setup is actually the braid, and then the third thing is the reel. So you want to pick a braid that is good for casting, that is thin and is strong. And the one I have is a PE 1.5 Varivas casting braid, and this is rated to 24 pounds. And then the reel I've picked, you basically want a size 2500 or size 3000 reel, and the one I use is the Penn Slammer IV 2500. And that's it in terms of super light jigging. Thank you for watching my video and being part of my journey of learning this new jigging technique. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you want to keep up with my fishing content, please hit subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers guys.